Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I'm Sally Ganga from College Coach. Today is going to be a pretty special day, very timely, maybe controversial. In fact, I'm quite confident it's going to be controversial, but extremely important to college admissions and the college landscape today. So we're really going to be devoting the entire show to decisions recently made by the Supreme Court of the United States. Kira Tyler, College Coach veteran, will be joining me for the second and third segments to discuss the impact of the court's recent ruling on the use of affirmative action in college admissions. But for this first segment, I'm talking with Michelle Clifton. Those of you who are watching the video, you can already see her on screen. She's a College Coach finance expert, and she'll be discussing or telling me about, because I don't know much about this particular topic, SCOTUS's recent decision regarding student loan repayment. So welcome, Michelle.
Hi, Sally. Thanks for having me.
So maybe you could start by giving us like a little background. So we know that the Supreme Court blocked federal student loan debt relief last week. So yes. Any updates, like maybe give us the background if people aren't 100% sure what's going on?
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. So back last August, President Biden had announced that there was going to be one-time debt relief for federal borrowers up to $20,000. So $10,000 for most borrowers, $20,000 for those that got Pell Grants. And so that there were a couple cases that ended up going to the Supreme Court. And then one in particular, which was Biden v. Nebraska, that one ended up ruling against student loan debt relief on Friday. That was announced finally on Friday with the 6-3 decision against the forgiveness program. However, there were some updates on Friday afternoon. So President Biden announced that they're going to try again this time. So before it was through the HEROES Act of 2003, which basically was a way to waive or modify provisions of Title IV aid due to a national emergency. And that did not work that way, obviously. But with what they're going to try to do this time is go through the Higher Education Act of 1965. Now, what that means is that it's going to, if this is successful, it's going to take longer to go through the process because it requires negotiated rulemaking, which includes like public hearings and a comment period. It could take months to go through this process. And we don't know if it's going to be successful, but if it is, we're certainly going to be following it closely either way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Pretty complicated. And interesting to know that there is another potential avenue. That is definitely something that I wasn't aware of. So that's good to know. And then, so what should borrowers who requested a refund during the pause do now?
Yeah, so they had announced when the one-time debt relief was initially announced, they said anyone who made payments from March 13th of 2020 to present could actually request refunds for their payments, especially those who were going to be getting the one-time debt relief. So if you were someone who requested a refund and you still have that money sitting in an account, hopefully, you can actually pay that towards your student loans really at any time. But ideally, it would want to do so before September 1st because September 1st is when interest is going to resume on federal loans. So if you want it to all go to principal, it's best to do it now.
Yeah, I have a family member who's in that situation. And I'm like, I know that it's not like exciting to spend $10,000 on your student loans, but think about what you'll get back if you do this.
Exactly. I know it's hard.
Interest rates are not low on loans. You know what I mean?
Right. So, yeah, absolutely.
All right. And how about the pause though? Could it be extended again? I mean, it was extended,
yeah,
more than
so
once.
many times. You would think that I imagine they probably would have wanted to extend it again while they go through this process, but due to the debt ceiling bill, they're actually blocked to do that any further. So they have to resume repayment. So as I said, interest resumes on September 1st. The first payments are going to be due in October. So that borrowers will likely have varying deadlines in October, but the first payment will be due in October. The date will be determined by their servicer. So servicers are required to release billing statements at least 21 days prior to the due date. So they will know at least 21 days prior. And then something else that was interesting on Friday afternoon was they announced a 12-month kind of a grace period that they're calling an on-ramp period. So
Mhm.
what this is it means that any borrower who doesn't make any payments or misses some payments between the time frame of October 2023, when the first payments are due, through September of 2024, they're not going to be charged late fees. They won't be reported negatively to the credit bureaus, and they won't go into default. However, as we talked about, interest will still start to accrue on September 1st. And those that are working towards forgiveness, whether that's public service loan forgiveness for government or not-for-profit workers, or even those that are planning to pay under an income-driven plan for a long period of time and hoping for forgiveness after 20 or 25 years, those months that they miss will not count towards that. So
Okay.
it's nice. It'll be nice for those who need the extra time, but if you can make your payments, I'd encourage you to do so.
Yeah, don't ignore that interest accruing. That is
Yeah, absolutely.
not a good thing for the balance. So,
Right.
yeah. So have the details of the income-driven repayment plan changes been released yet?
They have, yeah. So this was so they announced that they released proposed changes back in January, and we've been waiting for them to finalize them. And they, as I wondered would happen, they announced it with all of this on Friday. So they are going to change the income driven plans as they proposed, but a couple changes within those changes. So before it was going to be that they were modifying the revised pay as you earn plan, which I really wasn't loving the revised, modified, modified, revised wording. So thankfully they're rebranding completely to the save. It's going to be now, Repay is now the save plan, and save stands for saving on a valuable education.
Mm.
So, but so we always knew that these changes, and I'll talk about what the changes are in a second, but they potentially wouldn't go into effect until July of 2024. We were hoping that they were going to be doing an earlier implementation if they could, since people are going into repayment earlier. And so they did announce that some of the changes will go into effect in October, but some will not go into effect until July, to make things confusing, because everything's always confusing with loans. So
Mhm.
a couple things that are happening now. So with income-driven repayment plans, the way that they are calculated is they take the poverty guideline based on your family size, and it's assessed at a certain percentage. So currently the revised pay as you earn is 150%. Now that's going to be increasing to 225%. So they take that amount, and that's,
200, so 225% of the
of the
poverty.
poverty guideline, that's
Okay.
not counted as income
Hmm.
towards your calculated payment. So
Okay.
that right there will decrease payments for a lot of people. So just they had given the example of anyone who earns, like a single person earning 32,800 or less, they will have a zero due monthly payment. So if you make under that, you can assume that your payments will be zero. Or a family of four, if they make 67,500 or less, they would also have zero. But they did say that as far as like a general impact, anyone who earns more than that will save at least $1,000 a year in their payments.
Hmm.
So that alone will decrease some payments just based on that calculation. And then a couple other things that are happening right away. This is a great one. So the way it works right now is that, so say you have a very low monthly payment and it's not even paying off the accrued interest each month. That accrued interest would make your loan continue to grow. So you'd be in repayment for years and years, and your balance is just increasing. And
Hmm.
yes, maybe eventually you'll get forgiveness, but that can be really stressful. I've talked to so many borrowers that has been a huge point of stress because they feel like they're not getting anywhere.
Hmm.
So now that interest will stop accumulating. So if your monthly payment is zero, or if it's low and you're not covering the interest will not accumulate on the loan,
Okay.
which is
And
great.
that really is huge. I know
It
someone
is.
who I've known people, it's like, they pay off 20,000 and they owe more than when they started.
Oh
And yet
yeah.
they have been paying off. I mean,
Yep.
it seems so unjust,
Yeah. No, in this
Um,
past year alone, I've talked to so many borrowers who have had loans since the late 90s, and it's just
mhm.
like, and their balances are similar to what they started with. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I took out loans. Like, I want to be clear that I'm not one of these people who thinks never take out loans, but
Oh yeah. No, I did too.
I mean, but I only had to borrow like 12,000, like you can repay that, right? Like I drove a used car for a very long time. Like that was, like, like I drove a very old car and I didn't have a car payment. And then I was able to repay my loans. And I know that that still puts me in a fortunate position, but I think like some amounts you can pay off. Like, what would you say as a rule of thumb for people listening to this going forward?
Yeah.
Like,
Our typical rule of thumb is if you can keep your borrowing to the total of what your first annual salary will be getting out of school, then you'll be in a good
mhm.
position to repay that
And
back.
research that. Don't assume that
Yes.
because a
Oh, yeah.
friend of yours older brother is making a killing.
Yep.
So yeah, do some research on that. Go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Occupational Outlook Handbook, like spend some time trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
My first job out of
absolutely.
college, mind you, this was quite a long time ago, but I was making 20,000 a year. So it's good that I borrowed less than that.
Yeah. So
Like,
you were in a good position.
yeah,
You're a
I
great
was
example
able
for
to
that.
pay it off, even though my income was fairly low. So
Yeah.
all right. So, and what should borrowers be doing now then? Like, there's a lot of like, well, if then. So, what should they be doing now? Like,
Sure.
what are some resources for them, beyond obviously this podcast?
Yeah, I would say the most important thing is to find out who your servicer is, because there's been so many changes within the federal servicing since 2020. So most borrowers who were in repayment in 2020 have a different servicer than they did back then. Many have switched or gotten out of federal servicing. So the best way to find out who that is to log into studentaid.gov. You'll need to have your username and password that you used for the FAFSA to get in. If you forgot it, you can reset it. But go to the dashboard within that website and that'll show you who your servicer is. If it's a servicer you've never been into their website before, make sure either way so if you've never been in, create an account with that servicer so that they'll have all your current contact information, your phone number, your address, and all of that. And then if you have been in that site, but it's been a while, because a lot of us just haven't logged in quite some time, make sure you know what the username and password is, have it reset if you need to, and then go into your servicer site and make sure they have your current phone number and address so that they can reach out to you once they start to prepare everyone for and so once you're there, know who your servicer is, then I would say now it's time to really estimate your monthly payments to see what they're going to look like going forward. So use the loan simulator on studentaid.gov. I was just on it this morning and it doesn't have any of the save plan updates there currently. So it's going to show the current calculation of repay, but at least get you started to see the different plans, use that loan simulator. And then if you haven't already, review your budget, create a spending plan, especially if you've gotten out of the habit of paying these loans, or if you're a recent graduate and you've never been in repayment. This is going to be a shock for a lot of people. So take some time to do that now, and don't wait until the last minute. Don't wait until September, even October to worry about this. We have the summer to take some time to get prepared. So do that now. As we get closer, go ahead and choose a repayment plan. And if you can, start setting aside what your monthly payment is going to be now. So if it's going to be $300, set aside $300 each month this summer, and then you'll have some extra money. You can use that to make a one-time payment to your loan, or if you have higher interest rate debt, you can use it for that. Or if you need to bump up your emergency fund, you'll have some money there, but you'll be used to not paying that. So it won't be as stressful and hard in the fall once we get back into this. And I'd say the last thing would be to set up auto debit for your payments if you can, because that'll give you a 0.25 interest rate reduction. And you can do that right with your servicer.
Yeah. And then you don't have to worry about getting delayed and what can happen
Exactly.
with all that. Like, yeah, you can even pick your date on that probably, right? Like, I mean, I'm just guessing, or are you not
I
allowed
don't
to?
think you can.
Oh, that's too bad. Because I
Yeah.
always tried to set up my bills for right after my paycheck.
Yes, I do that with a lot of things, like my car payment and
Yeah.
credit cards and things like that. But yeah, I don't think you can change it once it's set. I mean, you might be able to ask your servicer, but I'm not quite sure there.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah, just in case. That's a good way. If you're not good at budgeting, that's a good way to know. This is what I have left. I don't have any more left.
Oh, totally.
So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. When we return, I'll be welcoming Kira Tyler to discuss SCOTUS's decision on affirmative action at colleges and universities.